Hey everybody, so today we're going to go over the common beer styles out there. This kind of came from inspiration after visiting a grocery store today, and the beer person, also in charge of the liquor, so maybe they knew that better, um, just wasn't getting what I was trying to ask for. It was pretty simple, but I'm here to help, so that's what I want to do with this video today. So, common styles. Let's start with first of all, there's only two types of beer. That might shock you because you've heard of all the different kinds before. That's because there's lagers and there's ales. Lager is just fermented with the yeast on the bottom, and ale with the yeast on the top. And you get different qualities from each one. Mostly on the lagers, you get a crisper finish, and ales, you have a lot more varieties you can kind of come up with. If that kind of helps break that down a little simply. I don't like to make it real complicated, but ales versus lagers is your basic two kinds, and then from there we're going to go a little deeper. So American Pale Ale is the what the judges would call the name of it, but you might see it today as a session IPA is what you kind of see. So between 4 and 5% or so, and then lower in the IBUs typically. You might think about Founders All Day IPA, if that's helpful, or even Dale's Pale Ale from Oscar Blues. That's also another good style to compare to. Next is the IPA. I have to add this in here because it's super common today. Typically between 5 to 8% or so, maybe 5 to 7, and the IBUs range between 45 and 75-ish. I would say for your average IPA, and you're gonna have a nice little multi background backbone to it. Also, you're gonna have the hop shine through pretty well. In 2010 to 2012-ish, and in that range, you're going to have a lot more of the bitter front end of the beers like that. Now they're a lot more of a juicier IPAs, meaning they have a lot more aroma on the back end, a lot more flavor than just that strong bitter side. Typically, you had in the earlier days of the craft beer boom. Um, Next, you have the stout. So you might think of a Guinness or something like that. Um, Obviously a lot of craft breweries have a lot more different stouts as well, but the universal one is the Guinness because it's international. Here you're gonna have a lot of dark roast, a lot of coffee flavors, a lot of big chocolate flavors all mixed together, or separate even, of course. And it's going to be a nice thick beer, and that comes from the oats being added to the beer. That gives it a more frothiness feel to it and more mouthfeel. Um, does really well in those cold winter nights, and usually now Guinness is in the 3% ish range, I believe, but a lot of your craft beer um, stouts versions are between like 5 and 10% and the average. Of course, you have your bigger ones too, but I'm talking about average. Um, it's also your more versatile one because you can make it bigger and put that into a bourbon barrel to age it. So next we have the wheat beer. You might think of Blue Moon or Hoegaarden or Shock Top as your bigger national flavors there, or might even call this a wheat beer. This is a nice, refreshing beer just because the wheat just has a refreshing quality to it. It goes great in the summer days. A lot of wheat beers are great for adding fruit to them, like watermelon and stuff like that. You might see out there in the world. Next, the lager. So you might think of, I don't know, Budweiser, right, as your big American lager. Um, Usually pretty crisp, not a lot to it, just and you have a distinct flavor. Um, Now, don't get this mixed with the Pilsner, which is a specific type of lager. You might think of a Czech Pilsner, and it's a little bit different on the finish. There's actually more flavor, most people will say this is a Pilsner than an American lager. Um, an amber ale is also probably the biggest reason that craft beer kind of got bigger, was it had in the 90s a push, and then in the 2000s another push with like New Belgium's flat tire. What you're going to get out of this one is just a little bit more malt than you're used to than like an American lager. It's a good gateway craft beer entryway because it just goes. It's pretty simple on the drinking side. It's not nothing. It's not too harsh. It's not overwhelming, but you do get some caramel and crystal malt flavors you get out of there, and it helps people kind of get used to what craft beer can be about, and then from there you can explore more. The English Pale Ale I included just because it's kind of out there. Think of your IPA, but a little bit more bitter, but a little more malty too, is the best way to describe that one. Goes great with like fish and chips or something. Um, the porter. So a lot of people say, what's the difference between a porter and a stout? Usually, and by style guidelines, a porter is more um, it's like a stout, but just not as thick. It's also a little more sessionable if you do it at 5 to 7 ish, more 5%, 5 to 6% range. Um, Typically, it's not as thick, sort of thing, but you get mild hop flavors. A lot of people make a smoked porter. I'm not a fan of the smoked porters myself, but just me. But a lot of smoked porters are more really roasty, and I think the smoked ones are a little more. The smoky tastes are an acquired taste, but to each their own. Of course, I don't hate them. I will try them. But I'm not. I don't go for them. That's for sure. Um, a Hefeweizen. It's kind of like a wheat beer, but more you kind of mixed your grains with wheat in your regular base two row malts. Um, it is a nice. The difference between a Hefeweizen and a wheat beer is a little more spice to it, and then fruit taste without even adding fruit. Um, Kind of the best way to describe that. Then you have your sours. Really big these days. A lot of sours out there with their Brettanomyces uh, as they use this name the yeast to make it sour. Um, it's been growing out like crazy, and there's been a lot of breweries that are just center on sour type beers. Um, I I like them. It's like a love hate thing, I guess, with them because you have a lot of ones that are really sour, and I'm like, I can't really finish a whole lot of those, at least back to back. But then you have like your easier sours to get into, like your kettle sours, which aren't as tart, and they're still fun to try. I like the smaller flight versions, sort of thing, rather than a 16-ounce can. That's a lot of sour to take on. Um, a lot of gozas will say, they're have to have salt in there. They're definitely huge in popularity these days because of the sour movement. I don't think it has to have salt, but another good one to get into is the gozas because they're a little easier to start with because there are some uh, the sours can be pretty sour. Um, your brown ales. That's my favorite fall beer, probably outside of Marzens and Oktoberfest type beers. Could probably put that in the same category. Just a I think a Marzen is almost like a brown ale, a lager version of a brown ale or amber ale mixed together. But with brown ales, you're going to get a lot more malt, of course, very little hop, but you also have a lot of chocolate and toffee flavors in the front end there. Um, I wanted to put this in here just because some people are really like don't like a lot of beer styles, but they do like barley wines. Like they'll try all the different beer styles, but somehow it's not like most of them. But they do like barley wines. It's a really strong, high alcohol content, a lot of strong fruit, caramel and toffee flavors mixed in there, and then typically we'll have a good amount of hops. We don't really taste them, but they're there. But I can taste them. Some people can't. But it is a nice, big, strong beer. Now, my favorite ones that attention brewers, I want you to look at doing a lot more of these if you could. I think you'd sell them pretty well, in my opinion. But the Belgian doubles and triples. Not saying that correctly, but it's okay. But a Belgian double and triple, and or even Belgian quads, are so good because you have that Belgian um, famous yeast that it's really hard to explain other than like a banana and clovey type um, flavor and aroma you get out of there. But when you add if you have a Belgian double or a triple, you get a lot of nice big caramel and toffee flavors, nice strong punches and stuff. I It's my favorite style, my favorite one to brew as well because there's not a lot on the shelf. But anyway, there you go. Here's your 15 or so common beer styles. Hope you can go try a few of them, maybe all of them tonight. Enjoy. Thanks for watching and thanks for subscribing as well. Cheers.